welcome to the Dibley Diary for this week. This week, in Thought for the Week, we're going to be thinking about possible and impossible things. And while I've been thinking about it for Thought for the Week, I've been also thinking in the Rural Challenge about things which church rules make possible or which are just impossible because of the church rules. So we sit within the Church of England, this established church, and sometimes there are things which people ask us to do which are just not possible for us to do within the rules. And we have to remember that the rules are a legal framework for the Church of England churches. Canon law is just that, it's law. So what if somebody comes and asks me if they want to do something which is actually impossible? It's not possible within the framework of the canon law rules. Well, I think how we respond to people in that is really important. We have to be honest, we have to say actually these are the rules, this is what the rules say, and we can't do this. This is not possible within the rules. But we could do this, or we could do that, or we could do this other thing, which are all similar things, but they are within the rules. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, what are these mysterious things that people are asking you to do which are not possible? Well, the most frequent occurrence of these clashes come around those incidences where we're trying to get a gravestone erected into a churchyard. And there are all sorts of rules around that about what you may or may not be able to put on the gravestone in a churchyard. For example, we can't have pictures of people, so if someone comes to me and says, oh, we really want to have a gravestone for Nanny with a picture of her on it, you just can't do it. That's just not allowed. So it's not in the rules, and there are a lot of rules around weddings and who can and cannot get married within the church. And I mean, we can offer people blessings, we can do all these other things, but most of the time when you approach people and say, well, these are the rules, we can't do this, this is not possible, but we could do this or this, people will go away and they'll cogitate on it and they'll understand. Sometimes you get someone who is just really nasty about it. They might say, actually, of course you can just break the rules for me, can't you? You can just break the rules for me. Or, I mean, in the most extreme example, I have someone who had threatened to ruin my reputation around the village because I wouldn't go against the advice of the bishop on a rules matter, which is very extreme, but it's something that we struggle against. Think of your vicar as they're trying to work out how they might make something possible from an impossible situation. This week in Thought for the Week, we continue with where we left off in Matthew 14. Jesus sends the crowds away. These are the crowds he has just fed using the 5 loaves and 2 fish. He sends them away. He goes by himself to pray. He sends the disciples to go across the lake in the boat. And whilst Jesus is doing there, it gets quite choppy, it gets quite difficult, the waves get bigger. Then Jesus goes walking to them across the water. And then they think he's a ghost. They think he's a ghost. And I guess they think he's a ghost because that's a possible thing that they've heard of that could be happening. But Jesus assures them he's not a ghost. Peter says this thing, well, if you're not a ghost, command me to come onto the water with you. Peter steps out of the boat, goes onto the water. He walks on the water for a bit. He then sinks when he's frightened of the waves. Jesus hoiks him up and they go into the boat. And as soon as Jesus gets into the boat, the storm stops and all the disciples say, truly this is the Son of God. Truly you are the Son of God. I really feel for the disciples at this point because they understood Jesus is special. They know that about Jesus, but there have been a lot of impossible things for them to deal with in the past 24 hours. We can go back, we can start with the turning all the loaves and fish into enough food for all these thousands and thousands of people. And then Jesus is walking on the water. Is that the second impossible thing in 24 hours? Then Peter walks on the water, which is also an impossible thing. And then when Jesus gets into the boat, the storm just suddenly stops. So I reckon that's maybe 4 impossible things. I was reminded this week, thinking about the passage of what is said in Through the Looking Glass by the Queen in Lewis Carroll's book, where she says, sometimes I have believed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Well, the disciples are being asked to believe a lot of impossible things, and that Jesus is the Son of God. And I wonder what it is that we know is possible or impossible. I wonder what's taught us that. I wonder who's taught us things which are possible and things which are impossible for us. It's interesting, isn't it? We can take a very, very rationalist approach to this. We can think about people's behaviour, that they are always just trying to do the right thing, that they're believing that the simple rational explanation is the best explanation. I remember shocking someone a few years ago by saying, well, why are you expecting someone's behaviour to be rational? Because their behaviour is determined by so many different things, so many things people have told them, by all their experience, by all these different things that have happened. And so it is for the disciples. They're in the boat. They've been taught things by their parents, by their society, by their religious leaders. They've been taught things by their experience. I mean, who would have thought that anybody could walk on the water? And then not only is Jesus walking in the water, but Peter has a good go at it as well. So there are impossible things happening, and the disciples are having to learn to deal with it. I was thinking about the fishermen a bit this week, and thinking how about they were good for Jesus's followers because they were tough, they were resilient, they knew all about storms, they knew all sorts of other things. But we really see the people in that boat in this story having to do a lot of work with the fact that Jesus is doing impossible things. And what does that mean for them, that Jesus is doing impossible things? I was trying to work out how I wanted to finish my thought for the week this week, but I came on this because I reckon if we think about it, lots of things will have happened in our lives, lots of things that God would have sorted out which were impossible, that God would already have intervened in our life in an impossible way, just like he was intervening in the lives of the disciples in an impossible way. And we can look back and give thanks for those times when God has behaved and done something impossible. But also we should look forward with hope and wonder what other impossible things God has in store for us. The Dibley moment of the week this week is something which happened to me many years ago now, when my eldest child was choosing a buggy board to go on the back of the buggy, so they could stand on the buggy board and the younger child could go in the buggy, and we had a little kind of tandem of people going on. We just chose which one, my child chose which one they wanted, and I pressed the order button, and then they got up from where we were sitting and went through to the other room to where the printer was. And I'm like, what are you doing in here? And my child said, well, is the buggy board not coming out of the printer? They were so used to choosing what colouring in to print out, and then that would come out of the printer and they would go and get it. But no, I had to explain, no, all that time ago, you have to wait for the person in the van to bring the parcel. It's not going to come out of the printer. As I've been reflecting on change and impossible and possible things this week, I've been thinking, I wonder if it's now possible, if you have a 3D printer, to order a pattern and for the buggy board to come out of the printer. Well, that's it for the Dibley Diaries for this week. I pray that you and your village, however large or small, have a really blessed week where God will bless you by making something good that you thought was impossible happen.